What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and today I want to share with you a piece of advice that has the potential to completely change your life. And when I say that, I actually mean that, because this is something that had somebody told me this growing up, my life would have changed completely. So what you have to understand is that in this world there are two types of people, and this applies to both men and women. So on one side of the fence you have low value people, and on the other side of the fence you have high value people. And the main difference between these two types of people is basically just how they do things. And more than anything else, it's how they think. Because as I've always said, it is how you think that changes how you behave. And behavior is like the main thing that people are going to judge you on. So if you just look around, like pretty much anywhere you go, you're going to see lots of low value men and lots of low value women, and lots of high value men and lots of high value women. And if you want to see things in your life really start to change for the better, what you have to do is improve yourself and transition yourself to become a high value man, which really just involves thinking and behaving a little bit differently. And I'm about to show you exactly how you can do this. So something that you need to understand is that high value men have so much more respect, not just from men, but also from women. And if you look around you, you'll see that there's like always this hierarchy thing kind of in place. And nobody actually says anything about it directly unless you're somebody like me trying to explain it to somebody else. But the fact is that it's always there. And what you have to understand, especially when it comes to women, is that women are always going to be looking for high value men. And it doesn't matter if these girls are low value or high value themselves, they both are still always going to be looking for high value men. And nobody's 100% sure exactly why women are trained to do this, but the reality is that this is just how it works. And they are basically spending like every second of every day making sure that they're looking as good as they can and doing the things that they can do to try to attract a high value man into their life. And every single time that a girl walks out the door, she's gonna have all kinds of men checking her out, and it's her job or her duty, since she is a woman, to basically screen through these men and choose only the man who is the highest value. Now, a lot of times, some girls do end up settling for a lower value man. So your goal should always to be the high value man. So the point here is that you want to transform yourself from wherever you are now to a high value man. Because guys who are high value end up getting like all the rewards in life. And it sounds really unfair when you think about it like that, but it's really just the way that things work. And you can either accept it and adapt and become the guy that gets all the rewards, or you can just deny it and end up becoming a low value man who just walks around and thinks that life is unfair all the time. Now, if you want to like almost instantly become a high value man, the number one thing that you need to understand is that you need to always retain your ability to walk away. So what does this actually mean? It means that one of the biggest factors that makes a man low value is the inability to walk away. And when I say walk away, what I actually mean is to turn something down. It's funny because I've known several dudes who pretty much went their entire life without getting any kind of action, so to speak, from girls. And they basically didn't even get any sort of attention or nothing, like no looks of interest, nothing like that. And so as you know, growing up, things tend to get a little bit easier for guys who had a lot of trouble getting any sort of attention from girls in high school, but not that much easier. So what happened was you had these guys who basically never got any attention from like any girls growing up. And then once they got a little bit older, they finally started to get a little bit of attention from a lot of the girls who were, for lack of a better word, desperate. And these are kind of like the female versions of the guys. And so what happens is you'd have these girls who would show a little bit of interest to these guys. And seeing as these guys had never got any sort of interest shown in them by a female whatsoever, they would instantly like pounce on the opportunity to have this sort of interaction with women. And the things that happen when you have two extremely desperate people connecting is not always a good thing. And what usually happens is that these encounters usually end up in catastrophe. So the point here is that one of the biggest things that actually makes a man low value is an inability to walk away, and especially when it comes to women. So deep down, all of us guys, we know that we have a certain level of value. And a lot of times, the level of value that we believe that we have actually matches up pretty closely with the level of value that other people view us to have. And in other cases, the value that we think we have doesn't match anywhere close to the value that people perceive us to have. But the point here is that if you actually think about it for a second, intuitively, you probably have a pretty good idea of how much value you have to offer in general as a man. And that estimate is going to be factoring in many superficial things, such as your overall wealth, or how much income you make, or how you look physically and stuff like that. But it's also going to factor in the intangibles, such as your ambition or your self-discipline, or all of these other character traits that really contribute to what makes a high value man. So if you would like to transition to become a high value man almost overnight, one of the biggest things that you have to start doing is being willing to walk away, which is basically just another way of saying you have to stop settling. And when I say settling, what I mean is settling for the low value girl when you know that you should be getting a high value girl, or at least a higher value girl than the one who's currently sending you offers, so to speak. But it's not just all about women, and in fact there's so much more to life than women. So when I say you have to be willing to walk away, what that also means is that if you're currently working a job right now that you absolutely hate and it's making you like no money, and you know that deep down that you are worth so much more than you are being paid, you have to be willing to walk away. Now, I'm not telling you to go and quit your job, because that would obviously be pretty reckless of me. But what I'm saying is that you have to sit down and really think about the things that are in your life right now, like your friends and your job and all these things that are super important. And you really have to ask yourself, am I just settling for these things? Are these things pretty much low value when I should be getting things of a higher value for what I have to offer? This is kind of a weird example, but if you go to a high-end restaurant and you're being charged a huge amount of money for the food that you get, and the waiter brings you a plate of food and it honestly just sucks so incredibly bad that there's just no way that you should be charged the extreme amount of money that you're being charged for that food, then you have to be willing to walk away. And I'm not saying to just run out of the restaurant and not pay your bill, but what I'm saying is you need to speak up for yourself and demand a higher quality for yourself, or demand a higher value. Because if you're paying a ton of money for something and you're just not getting the value that you're supposed to be getting for that money, you can't just settle and just take it. You have to speak up and you have to get what you know you're worth. Another quick example, just a few days ago, I took my Z06 in to get an oil change at a dealership, which is something that I was extremely nervous of doing, because you always hear horror stories about people taking out cars to joyride them and all kinds of stuff like that. And so what I did was I actually put a camera in the car. Thank God I did that, just to make sure that my car was treated the way that it should be treated while getting its oil change. So after I finished paying for the oil change, I took the car home and I watched the footage on the camera. And what I found was absolutely disturbing. What I saw was pretty much every single dude in the service room at the dealership messing with all the different functions of my car when they're supposed to be doing an oil change. But that wasn't even the worst of it. The dude who was actually doing the majority of the oil change on the car actually said at one point in the video that he thinks he overfilled the oil. And so what does he do next? He simply says, "Oh well," and slams the hood of the car. Think about that for a second. This guy just overfilled the oil in a $70,000 car. And we all know that you are absolutely never supposed to overfill the oil in an engine, because that can cause serious damage to the car. So you might think to yourself, okay, this guy just overfilled the oil. That's pretty bad, right? But it actually gets worse. So I continued to watch the video, and the last thing that I saw absolutely blew my mind. So after the oil change was done and the guy supposedly overfilled the oil, he got into the car and proceeded to drive it out of the service bay, when all of a sudden I heard him yell, "Oh shoot." And from the camera's point of view, you could see that the car had smacked something, and the force was so hard that it jolted the guy back and forward several times, which made it painfully obvious that the front of the car had been crashed into something. So after I saw all of this, you can imagine I was extremely pissed off. So I went out to look at the car to see what had actually happened. And there was a giant gash in the front lip of my car, which would probably cost easily $1,000 or more to fix in either paint work or completely replacing the entire front lip of the car. And the crazy part about this is that even though it was most likely an accident, the guy who did it didn't say anything to anybody about it in an attempt to try not to get in trouble. This guy was so low value that he didn't bother to tell anybody about it and accept the consequences of something that he just did to my car. Now, in this particular situation, a low value man probably would have just let it happen and absorbed the damage and went and figured out how he was going to get it fixed, even knowing that some dude just crashed his car while all he was supposed to be doing was giving it an oil change. But since I am always striving to become and stay a high value man, I handled this a little bit differently rather than just settling. It's still going to be a huge inconvenience for me, but now hopefully this guy who works there is going to potentially lose his job, all because he decided he was going to crash a customer's car and not even tell anybody about it, on top of overfilling the oil and causing all sorts of other problems that shouldn't have been caused. So to start becoming a high value man overnight, what you have to do is simply stop settling for things. What you have to do is you have to know your value as a man, and you can't just settle for things in life when you know that you deserve better. And this applies to females, your job, your friends, your current living situation. Whatever it is that you feel is simply not matching up with the level of value that you know you have to do something about. At any time in the future, when you feel you are not being given the value that you deserve for what you have to offer as a man, you have to put your foot down and say, no, I'm not going to settle for that because I deserve better. And with that said, until next time, thanks for watching.